Welcome back. In today's episode, we pick up with part 2 of the interview with Allyson Ward, expert in raising children and creating independent young adults. In today's episode, she talks about the top mistakes we as parents make every day and how to avoid them.
Welcome to this edition of Peak Performers Podcast with your host, Thor Conklin. Thor will be sharing the necessary tools, strategies, and psychology you'll need to become a peak performer in any area of your life or business.
Thor Conklin here. We give you the tricks, the tips, the tools, the strategy, the technology, and the psychology peak performers use in order to get more done and execute at the highest level. If you know what to do but struggle with getting it all done, or simply want to raise your game to the next level, this podcast is for you. Sit back and enjoy. You know, not that you've made any of these mistakes, but what are some of the things that either you have done in the past or that you see your clients kind of repeating? What's a common theme? Because I think we learn sometimes by our mistakes more than what we do successfully. What's some of the things you're seeing?
I would have to say, you know, in this day and age when divorce is so rampant, and I see a lot of parents who are divorced. I was divorced as well as a single mom for many, many years. And I would say the thing that I see more often than not is people overcompensating for their divorce. I hear, you know, they're in a situation where they've created a monster in their kid because they've, you know, well, I gave them everything because I felt sorry because they had to deal with this horrible divorce and they were a victim of that. When the truth of the matter is that by giving them everything, you are robbing them. I mean, really, and I choose that word very carefully, you're robbing them of the opportunity to stand on their own 2 feet. So you may think in the moment, well, I'm giving them that new phone they want. I'm giving them that new car they want. I'm giving them, you know, a place in my home to live because that poor thing went through this. When the truth of the matter is, you're really not serving them. So the thing that I see consistently, again, because divorce rates are so high today, people seem to somehow feel that they have some guilt, and the way they're going to assuage their guilt is to just give their teens a ton of stuff that they probably normally wouldn't do.
Yeah, that's good insight. What else do you see?
Let's see. One of the thing that I kind of alluded to this before, I hear so often from friends of mine who are in academics, whether they be in teachers, whether they be in administration, or even actually on the hiring side. I've had people in each one of those situations talk about parents who are advocating for their kids, or they're calling to make excuses for their kids. I spent some time in Martha's Vineyard this summer, and I was on the beach, saw a friend of mine I hadn't seen in a while, met his wife for the first time, and she had a big job at a consumer packaged goods company in Illinois, and she talked about at the end of one summer, they'd had, you know, let's say 30 interns, all from top business schools around the country. And at the end of the summer, they gave, you know, maybe half of those people job offers. And she was the head of HR, and she gets a phone call from the parent of one of those people who had received a job opportunity. Now, this person went to the Kellogg Business School, which is part of Northwestern University, top 5 business school right in the country. This young man's father called to negotiate the offer. And it's like, are you kidding me? Right? I mean, at what point is this kid going to stand up for himself?
Yeah. Literally 6 months ago, I was attending an event at one of the private schools here in Atlanta, and the guidance counselor for freshmen at Stanford University. Same kind of scenario. Top students in the world going to Stanford.
Right.
She said the college students that are arriving as freshmen don't know how to do anything.
They don't.
They're smart. They can do books. Right. She goes, I get so many phone calls from parents telling me what I need to do for their kid. And she goes, it's amazing. She goes, we are really creating a generation that doesn't know how to fend for themselves.
Right. And so you talk about, I mean, your whole message is about peak performance.
Absolutely.
How can you be a peak performer when you can't tie your own shoes? And that's really what we're talking about. It's the tie your own shoes as a college student, right? It's like that's a metaphor for, make decisions on your own, stand on your own 2 feet, know how to pick yourself up off the ground when you had a defeat because you never had to do it before. I mean, think about it. I mean, from the time that my kids, when my older girl Hattie was gosh, she was probably like in second grade, she was already a competitive gymnast. And, by time she was, like in fifth grade, we're traveling to meets, and I cannot tell you how many times at the end of the competition, they not only gave first, second, and third place trophies, right? And medals, but third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, and 10th. And it's like you're setting up an expectation for these kids that that's how life is. And it's not. And so, when they first, they get out of their little environments and they go off and have their first job or go off to university where they're out of the confines and the reach of, the loving arms of mom and dad. And now they got, seventh place and they weren't recognized and they're devastated. Same thing with work. I don't like, again, millennials get a bad rap. They have a different way of doing things. Doesn't make it all bad. At the same time, I will say sometimes I've been confronted with millennials who want an attaboy for showing up to work. And you don't get an attaboy for showing up to work, right? You get an attaboy for being the top salesperson. You get an attaboy for coming up with the best creative, whatever that is in your area. And so and then people are very upset, and they don't know how to deal with that upset. So we really are not helping our kids, which, like I said, is why I wrote the book. I mean, it's very specific. Kind of going back to one of the things you asked me before in terms of tips, and we were just talking about, the thing I see a lot is this people who don't advocate for themselves. In one of the chapters, I go into talking about what does that look like, because maybe you don't know what that means, parents, because maybe you just don't understand what I'm saying. So I give some examples. The other thing is you have to, the steps in self-advocacy. You've got to understand your strengths and your needs, right? What you said, what do you want and what prevents you, right? What do you need? Identify your personal goals. You shouldn't be going to school every day with no goal of your own. So know what those goals are. Notice what your legal rights and responsibilities are. If you need some additional support in the classroom, know what you have a right to, and then you need to communicate it to other people, your teacher, your guidance counselor, your parent, so you make sure you get what you need. But notice I say you as the student, not the parent. It's a student's responsibility. I'll just share with you my younger daughter. Really, like I said, school didn't come as easily to her. She's a good student, but did not come as easily to her as her sister. And she worked very hard at it. But it was through understanding about learning styles, understanding, whether she was visual, auditory, or kinesthetic learner, helped her. Once she got a handle on that, and frankly, it was going through not just working with me, but going through the leadership camp that, your kids and I have been through, the Anthony Robbins Foundation leadership program, and really understanding that she knows that she's very visual. She learns best by, she can go look at a YouTube video or Khan Academy and play back the video again. She's a tough time as an auditory learner. So once she learned that, some of the strategies she employs are she takes her notes with colored pens. It may look to someone else like she's doodling, but it helps her to remain focused and to get the concepts down. So it's now incumbent upon her, it's the beginning of the school year, she's got to go in and say, I have new teachers, this is how I learn, here's how I'd like to be supported. Same thing, she got a new job this summer. And we talked about, how she might go in and talk to her new manager, and it was at a smoothie shop. And so she went in and said, you know what, if you tell me what to do, I probably will have to come back and ask you again. If you could just show me the steps to make this smoothie, then I don't usually need to see it again.
Smart.
But that's how I learn. So it's taking the ownership.
Yeah. And this applies to, we're talking about kids,
Right.
but all of this applies to business. This applies to our are staff,
Yes.
right? If you're a business
Absolutely.
owner and you have employees, is every employee different? Yes.
Absolutely.
Do they act like kids? Yes.
Well, it's funny you say that. A moment ago you said, when you were talking about your son, Thor, you said, well, he wants certainty of significance, so I'm going to show him. I'm going to not give that to him. When that was really opposite of what you really wanted to do. And it's the same thing in your relationship. It's the same thing. I used to do this little seminar called like treat your man like a child. And it wasn't to, it was not to put men down. It was more to say treat them like you would your child, because there's no one you would treat better than your child. So take the same love and care when you're treating your man. Like, don't get frustrated because they need something that you think is ridiculous. Some certainty or significance that you think is silly that you wouldn't need. So give it to them. Give it to them. So treat them like a child.
That's great advice.
Yeah.
What does the research show with regards to parenting our children, let's say old school, where it's a spanking and it's, I'm the parent, you're the child, versus, hey, I want you to be my best friend. And I've heard talks, both ways. What does the research show in this area?
Yeah, it's interesting. I will tell you, and I'm drawing a blank on the terms there, the styles of parenting, authoritarian, and I can't remember the terms right now. I will tell you this whole concept of my child is my friend, and I want them to be my friend, does not serve. I can't.
It doesn't serve them, but sometimes it serves the parent, and I think a lot of this comes from getting their love from that child.
No question.
Yeah.
There's no question. It clearly doesn't. So I remember when, one of the reasons that I became such a great parent, and I can say that now, I used to hear that all the time. Oh, you're such a great parent. You're such a great parent. And I'm like, oh, come on.
I
Like,
love
that's
that, the
silly.
way you step up with that. It's just like, I'm a great parent.
Well,
That's
I am
awesome.
a great parent. And I didn't used to be able to do that. Okay. And
That's
I don't
awesome.
mean that to sound
Great
so
identity.
full of
No,
myself.
own it.
Yeah, no, and I really do. But the reason I'm a great parent, Thor, is that I just have done so much research. My kids were very young when my mom passed away, and she was an amazing parent. But then I had this huge hole. So I'm like, now what am I supposed to do? She's the person I would go and ask questions of. So then I had to start doing research to figure it out on my own. So I've done a ton of research on it. And I will tell you, this concept of my kid's my friend, I think you hit the nail on the head, right? It's me filling my needs as a parent for love and connection, because it's the way I know I can certainly get it if I can't get it in an intimate relationship, because it's a lot riskier there. So that, just to begin with. But the other thing, when my kids were young, and I was reading all these books, and the thing they always talked about was how important it was to set boundaries for your children, because not only does it create safety for them, they feel more secure. And then you also have the benefit of getting, a kid that is better behaved when you go into public. I'll tell you just a kind of a funny quick story. My girls were 2 and 5 when I got divorced. And I remember one night we lived downtown Chicago, a walk to Soldiers Field, the Bears football stadium. And one night I was like, I just need to go out and dinner. And I had the girls with me, and we went to a really nice restaurant that was a walk from our house. And I used to go there all the time. And I knew the managers, and they said, oh, it's no problem. Your kids are always welcome. So I decided to go on a Sunday night. I go on a Sunday night, which I had never been before. I don't know any of the managers there. And it turns out to be like date night. I don't know if people were going to the game, or I don't know what it was, but it was actually a pretty sophisticated place. And I walk in with these 2 kids, and people are looking at me like, oh my gosh, she's going to have these 2 bratty kids. It's going to ruin the atmosphere, But they seated me. And, my girls were dressed. They were very cute. They were dressed up to go out to dinner. So we're sitting through dinner and we had our meal. We had a cup of tea at the end of our meal. We had one snafu where my daughter dropped she had a paste on earring and she dropped it on the floor and she went to jump down and look for it. And I was like, no, 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 we can replace it. But what I did before we went was I said, girls, we're going out to dinner. Here's what I'm expecting and how I'm expecting you to behave when we go out to dinner. They had both had naps before we went. They had clear expectations laid out for them. So when they went out, they acted like little young ladies at the age of 2 and, actually 4.5 at the time. When we got up to leave, there was a couple next to us and they stopped me and they said, I'm sorry to intrude, but I just want to tell you, when we saw you come in and be seated next to us, we thought, oh my God, she's going to ruin our evening. She's got these kids here. Your children were the 2 best behaved children that we've ever seen before. And I share that story with you not to impress upon you or impress you that, oh, my kids are just so amazing, because I can tell you a bunch of horror stories too. But it was I had the guidelines in place, right? They knew what was expected of them. I didn't bring them in knowing they were going to be tired and cranky, right? So I had taken the steps to ensure. And it's the same guidance that I've done all through their upbringing.
That's so funny. As you're telling that story, I have an identical story like that. Best Italian restaurant here in Atlanta. Nicole was 3.5, maybe 4, walked in, wanted a high chair, and the maitre d's like, sorry, we do not have high chairs here. And I'm like, okay, how about a phone book? This is, I guess about 18 years ago, there was actually phone books. So we took 2 phone books, and I could just see they were just, oh, my God, here it comes.
Right.
It worked out awesome. He comes over at the end of dinner and goes, I would like to buy you dessert. You have the most well-behaved child. Now, right. My son? No, we weren't doing it with, he wasn't born yet, but we couldn't do it in. But, it's funny. Let the expectation. And if something did come up with Nicole and she just wasn't able to do it, I would have taken her outside. Mm-hmm. And, my wife would have finished her meal alone, but I was not going to disrupt the rest of the right. restaurant. So
sure.
Every peak performer that has ever lived or will live does one thing extremely well. They know how to take their ideas and execute on them. Ideas and knowledge are not power, but the ability to execute on them, that is real power. If you consider yourself a peak performer and really want to take your game to the next level and truly master the science of execution, I would like to send you some information about our upcoming event, Business Execution Summit. Simply take your phone and text the word BE Summit, one word, to 41411. And I'll send you some additional information on how to master the most important skill you will ever acquire for your life or your business. That concludes part 2 of our interview with Allyson Ward. Please tune in later this week for part 3. Thank you for listening. If you haven't already done so, please head over to iTunes and subscribe to the show. Also, please share this with family, friends, coworkers, or anyone that could benefit from this information. To make it very easy to share these episodes, simply go to my Facebook page, Thor Conklin, click on the episode that you want to share, and you can post it to your timeline. You just might be helping one of your friends on Facebook by sharing it on your page. You can follow us on Facebook and Twitter at Thor Conklin. The website is thorconklin.com. The email is info@thorconklin. While at the website, please sign up for our weekly newsletter with additional tricks, tips, tools, and psychology on how to be a peak performer. Remember, these episodes are anywhere between 6 and 35 minutes and are meant to be consumed during dot time doing other things. Until tomorrow, have an absolutely amazing day.